Okay. And we're live. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. We are here to talk about the steps you need to take to start a flexible freelance career so you can take control of your time and the work you do. I'm Randall Browning. If you've come to webinars, you might have seen me around. I'm head of content here at Skill Crush. And if you're new to Skill Crush, we teach people the digital skills that they need to get careers they want. I am here with Shala Burroughs, the co-founder and COO of CloudPeeps. And CloudPeeps is a company that matches startups and small businesses with remote community managers. So basically, what you need to know is that she has a ton of experience with freelancers and the problems they face on a daily basis. And she has so much valuable information to share just about the whole world of freelancing and what it's like to switch careers. I'm going to say hey, Shala.
Hey, everyone.
There she is.
Hi.
I'll show you her again soon. By the end of this call, you're going to understand everything you need to know before you go freelance and how to make a smooth career change. So maybe you've already thought freelance sounds good, but you don't really know what the logistics are or what that would actually look like in your life. And that's what we're talking about today. You're going to understand everything you need to know about how to move into freelance. And you're going to have all the right information also to make informed decisions about your freelance career so you can get started on the right foot and make money right away. Okay, some housekeeping. Throughout the webinar, I'm going to ask you guys to comment, and we're going to do lots of question and answer at the end. So wherever you're watching this webinar, there should be a comments feature below. If you're in Google Hangout, you can use the Q&A, and if you're in on the live webinar page, there should be a Facebook comments box below, and we'll be able to see those questions. Okay, I'm going to show you guys the slides, which I'm going to send out right after, so you can look at these again. Don't worry about that. Okay. So before we dive in and cover all of that, I mean, we have a lot to cover today, which is super exciting. But before I dive in, I kind of want to get a sense for where all of you are that are listening. So this can also be a good chance to, start commenting and see how that works. So I can just see where we're all starting from. I want to know, have you ever felt like everyone is going freelance and making tons of money, but you don't even know how to start? Do you wish you could have control of your schedule and the type of work you do, but you're confused about how exactly you would transition into freelance? Or maybe you just want to know if you're ready, like you feel like maybe you have the skills, but you aren't sure if you're ready to dive in, if you can make money and support yourself, if you can be successful. So if any of those apply to you, I want you to tell us in the question or in the comment boxes. And I have been there too, and so has Shala. She's going to talk about her own experience freelancing here in a minute. And I'm going to hand it over, but just to give you guys an idea before she dives into her presentation, we're going to talk about it's really two phases of moving into a freelance career. And the first part is, deciding you want to do it, figuring out if you're ready. And then the second part is making a transition, figuring out how to manage clients and projects and how to really streamline your work so that you're making money as soon as you start. And one more thing I'll add is that Shala is going to talk about the logistics of becoming a profitable freelancer. So she's not going to talk about like the specific types of freelancing, like what it would be to be a web designer or WordPress developer. And I can answer any questions you might have about the specifics of what you will do as a freelancer, the actual projects you'll be creating. And we can talk a little bit about the Skill Crush career blueprints later. But Shala, I'm going to hand it over. And
all right. Well, thank you so much, Randall. I really appreciate it. It's great to be here. Admittedly, I have to say, in terms of freelancing, I really fell into it. It wasn't really intentional. I had originally started working with a friend, Kelly Hoey, who's really incredible, on putting together events for female founders, which I was really passionate about, and did a great job because it's something that I'm really interested in. And then Kelly said, why don't you come work in a contract capacity and help us here at Women Innovate Mobile? And I'm really lucky because Kelly already knew the paperwork that I needed to sign, walked me through the steps, so I feel like I got it really easy. And that there are a few things that she did that really taught me how to do this without me realizing I was learning at the time. So it is a lot easier than you think, and it can sometimes be really scary. For example, Randall mentioned earlier that there's this perception that everybody's rolling in it, they're making thousands of dollars, but the reality is that it's hard for everybody, and that's absolutely not the case. There are people I've run into who, when you ask them, they'll say, oh, it's going great, it's fireworks, but in the reality they're like, I'm losing all my clients, and what do I do next? So, you're not alone, and it's just good to approach this with a whole perspective about it. Randall, should we transition to the next slide?
Sure thing.
So, yeah, careers, I like to think of careers as jungle gyms, not as this prescribed trajectory that you have to do. You have to go to school, and then you must do these 3 jobs, and then go back to school, graduate school, and then maybe you can think about freelancing later. I really think of them as jungle gyms, and if you move to the next slide, you'll see that my career has gone in many different directions, but I don't see that as being a bad thing. It's actually an amalgamation of skills, and if you break your career down to be an amalgamation of skills, it actually might make freelancing easier, and I'll get to that in a second. But my career trajectory started off as a consultant when I learned how to scope work with clients, understanding what client management and managing expectations was. And then I moved into being an intelligence analyst, where I figured out how terrorists use social media to proliferate extremist messaging. So very, very different, but taught me a lot of really core analytic skills that have come in handy. I wanted to pop the hood on a bunch of different businesses and see what they were like. So I transitioned into the startup world, where I worked for Lara Hoop Adventures. I actually worked for Course as well, which I forgot to put on here, but which is really funny. But I then started working with Women Innovate Mobile, and so these experiences taught me how to think about starting a business, how to think about sales and what that is and what that means. And that sales doesn't have to be a dirty thing. It actually is just helping people learn about what you're selling and whether or not that it makes sense for them. And all of this really led me to CloudPeeps. For example, I had been a consultant, and now I work with customers, and I draw on all those experiences. As an analyst, I look at the data of what's working and what's not. I used to run intelligence officers, work with a team to run them across the country, and I work with a lot of remote freelancers now. So that's what I mean when you think about looking at your resume, breaking it down, seeing the skills that you really used, and then isolating the ones that you want to do more of, and then thinking of your freelance career and saying, okay, great, I did design on this project, and I want to do more of that, or I want to do project management because I was so good at that and want to do it more often. And it's a little bit easier than swallowing the whole elephant and thinking of things in pieces.
That's really interesting. So it's almost like, I feel like in the past I've tended to think about going freelance and having to have a whole new skill. Like I'm going to learn to, I don't know, be a graphic designer. But it's really just compiling things you already know, maybe with some new skills, things you already like.
Exactly.
Cool.
All right. Shall we move on to the next? All right, and this is the getting started part, which is actually admittedly the hard part. Once you get over the hump of this, you're off to the races. And there are a few ways to think about doing that. So I first started freelancing in the traditional way, which is creating something for someone else. I did it for free. I did it really well, then transitioned that to being paid for doing that thing. one thing to think about is it can be really hard to say, oh, I'm giving away something for free. That's so hard, or am I not valuing my skills? But the first couple of times, it's actually worth doing that and showing people what you can deliver and then using it as a case study to really build. Because once you go out and say, look, I do this as a freelancer, then they don't necessarily know that you did it for free. All they know is that you've done really great work. The other way to think about finding freelance work is there are so many great platforms. So I've put a few up here with Randall, but Fiverr for really small activities, SkillBridge, Dribbble. I mean, I'm obviously going to mention CloudPeeps because it rocks. For social media people and community managers. 99 Designs as well. This is a great place to just get those few initial projects under your belt and be rated on these sites and then show that you have a true portfolio. One really funny thing, Dog Vacay wasn't up there, but when I was starting CloudPeeps, one of the ways that I created income is that I watched dogs. It's kind of like Airbnb for dogs. And you know, had some interesting experiences, one in which a 70-pound dog decided to go to the bathroom on my mattress on Valentine's Day. So this line of work is not perfect, but you do learn a lot, and it proves that you can do it without it being so painful.
So to me, it's like, if I'm thinking about my freelance career so far, which has only really been less than a year, I kind of did the traditional route just because I guess I wasn't aiming for freelance. I just fell into it. But what if somebody is choosing to start freelancing? Do they have to pick one of these paths, or is there a way to combine them?
It really is what works and what doesn't. I would start by picking 6 things. You know, try a couple of platforms, try doing a free project, try showcasing it on your LinkedIn that you're doing it. Try working through your closed networks of people from your past life. Maybe even try approaching one of your former companies and say, hey, I'm freelancing a little bit. I noticed that you needed help here. I'm happy to come in and step in on an interim basis since I already know your company. So there are so many ways up the mountain, and you don't have to pick any one thing. It just depends on what's best for you.
Yeah, cool.
There are pros and cons, which I'm happy to go through. One thing is, I was actually had breakfast with 2 friends of mine. One's another founder, and another one is a freelancer. He's done very well, but he's done a lot of hard work. And he loves being on his own in his home and thrives off of that. And we were talking about it, and I said, I absolutely can't do it. I actually wrote a blog post on it. I have to be around people. I love checking in somewhere in the morning. It's just maybe the corporate part of me will never die, but I think it's about knowing being really self-aware about what works for you. Mm-hmm. So flexibility may be great, but what if you want some help with structure? Taking the work that you want is so appealing, but recognize that you're also going to have to learn to market yourself and get out there and network to make sure that those projects happen. You get ownership of your day, which is incredible, but I was reading this excellent post today on Squiggle, and they wrote about how there are internal deadlines you set and external deadlines, right? So a deadline set by a manager, and how internal deadlines can help you get to the ultimate project, but that people really need those external deadlines. So are you someone who really needs that external deadline? Maybe you think, I want to be a freelancer, but I need that, and then maybe it's about getting an accountability partner to help you with that. I know I have several. My co-founder was one of my accountability partners from the beginning, and that's really how we came to get together and create CloudPeeps. The last thing that's really interesting is the clients you work with. You'll actually be able to work with people who are your style. You'll be able to vet them. You'll be able to say no, and that's really important. But you also might miss out on opportunities to grow in leadership skills if you're only working with one type of person or one type of product. So that's just something to consider too. The last thing, and I touched on this a little bit, but you're going to be running your own logistics. So it's not just about waking up and doing that job. You've got to think about accounting, operations, what your tax picture looks like, chasing down people for 1099s at the end of the year. So make sure that you're okay with that. And if you are, awesome. And if you aren't and would rather someone else do it, well, then maybe that's something to consider.
Yeah. So I'm trying to see, for me, since I've started freelancing, I'm like, everything you're saying, I'm like, yep, I get that. That makes sense. But I'm wondering if somebody who hasn't tried it before, if we could give them more context for, like, what if, for example, this one thing I worried about a lot before doing any freelancing was what you just said about logistics, how you have to handle, you're the marketing team and you're the accountant. If you, like, say you have no experience marketing, I mean, in my personal experience, it was sort of like you're not hit with all of these at one moment. Like, you can learn some as you're going. It's more like you just have to be ready to handle them. What do you think?
I think you have to be ready. You have to be very forgiving with yourself. So recognize you might have to iterate a few times. So if you're pitching for a new client, or if you're talking to someone and you're noticing that they're not really into the way that you're talking about it, just notice it. Work with a friend behind closed doors to say, hey, here's how I'm pitching my work. What else can I do? I can't emphasize enough reaching out to friends and family and having them give you a third-party opinion to make sure you're presenting yourself well. A friend of mine the other day was pitching someone and sold herself short in the email, and I said, absolutely not. You are incredibly talented. You have to sell yourself like this. And I think, again, it's having that third party dig in. Is that answering your question, Randall?
Yeah, I'm just trying to ask for more details for everyone, because I feel like this, for me, is one of the big questions. Like, can I handle being on my own,
And you don't have to dive in all at once. You can take one or two side projects and see how they work.
Oh, yeah, that's
true. And that's
true.
actually a better, getting in the kiddie pool before you dive in the deep end is always a good way to go.
True. It doesn't have to be like ripping off the Band-Aid. You can have a combination, especially these days. Like, maybe you have a part-time job and you start freelancing. Ready?
Yeah. Am I ready? Yeah, it really, and again, it comes down to being self-aware what works for you. So, let me switch to the next one.
Sorry, I was drinking water.
I think to be self-aware, it's about asking yourself honest questions. How many hours, look at your schedule now, how many hours this week can I commit to this thing for the next 2 months? Take a free project on for someone, map out the hours that you think it will take, and you can use blocks of time in your Google Calendar and just use a certain color and say, I think it's going to take this much time, and then track how much time it actually takes. And you can use, I have tools at the end, like Harvest or Toggle. There are a number of great time tools on the market. And that's a really great way to see, A, can I handle this? B, how do I scope work and manage expectations? And you can do it without, again, jumping in whole hog. Getting comfortable with selling your services is something that was so hard for me, because the tendency is to want to be humble. You're supposed to be humble about your talents, and you don't want to come off as arrogant or braggy at the same time. So it's settling into, how do I present myself well and not, undermine the talents that are really there. Yeah. And I would find a friend that's great at it. Leslie Zekas is so ridiculously talented, and she's very good at having that simultaneous, hey, I'm really good at this, I'm humble about it. And she's kind of a muse for me with that. I think there are just certain people who are great at it.
That's true. I think that about Leslie, too.
I mean, the other facets, and not to belabor what's already here, is take stock of how you actually like to work, and do it for a while. Do it for a month. I worked from home, and I thought it would be this I worked in corporate for so long, and I was like, oh, working from home, this is going to be amazing. And I wanted to claw my eyes out by the end of it. I was so bored. I missed people. I was like running around the apartment. I cleaned it 8 times. I mean, I needed to just get out, and I now know that about myself. And so you've got to find that out. And also sit down with your finances and say, how much do I really need? And make sure to look through from a tax perspective. How much do I need to save for taxes? And that information is all on the web, and do that proactively, because you don't want to get in a situation where you think you're earning X, but it's really Y, and it's a lot smaller.
Yeah, and if you guys are like, taxes, what are you talking about? In the free download we're going to send you away with at the end of the webinar, we've got some links to some resources for that can help you figure out planning for money and stuff. Because now that I've been through it for 1 year, I'm like, that is really important advice.
And make a plan. I mean, make a plan and then see if it works. Try 3 things, see if they work. If they don't, make another plan. So it's really about iterating and seeing what works for you. All right.
Oopsie.
And we talked about this again, and if you want to move to the next slide, that's great. It's tough to make that first transition. It's really scary. You're on your own. Execute something small for free. Make sure that you're also getting feedback on that. So if someone, and make sure with every single person you work with that they're giving you a quote. How is my work? Describe it exactly. What did I do for you? Make sure as you take on each of these projects, you literally write down and catalog the return on investment that you were able to afford your clients. So I drove twice as much traffic to their website. I improved their design, and it attracted their favorite client that they had been aiming to obtain. So make sure that you can quantify the effect that you have on people and write that down, because it's so easy to forget 4 projects later. So as you go, that's a huge thing that I've noticed with people.
Like just have a Google Doc that's filled with all the stats of things you've accomplished at your different clients.
Yeah, I'd say for each client have 1 review that you have from them or recommendation if you were able to do a really great job with them, and also what you actually 3 bullet points on what you generated for them, and quantify as much as possible. Research multiple income streams: Airbnb, Lyft, Dribbble, 99 Designs. So it doesn't all have to come from one place. It can come from a bunch of different places, and you can see what you like best. In terms of building a wait list and a pipeline, what people really love is when you say, hey, look, I'm really, take on a few clients, and you don't have to lie exactly, but you can say, look, I'm really busy, but maybe I can fit you in. There's a little bit of a wait list. And you'll notice that people will really want your services after that. It's a psychological thing. And you'll kind of create a pipeline for yourself. And there's a tool that actually you can use that I mentioned at the end of this. It's called Streak. But you can build out your pipeline with all these people who are waiting, so you don't have to worry next time about where your next project's coming from. We've already covered, part time, see how it works, iterate, and then invest and take all of those snippets that you've accrued from each of those projects, your ratings, your testimonials, what you were able to generate, and make sure you put it in a portfolio at the end. I can't emphasize this enough. If someone can go on your website and see all of the brands that you've worked with, they're going to be really excited about working with you.
That's really good advice. And it's easy to kind of forget about that when you're on the ground working.
And honestly, I'd say take an hour every week. I did this when I was a consultant, and I had to report on what I did for the client. Reserve it in your calendar. Make it a Friday somewhere, at a nice coffee shop, and really go through that each week. And then you'll be shocked about what accumulates that you can really showcase in a portfolio. This is my favorite Um, so I can't emphasize this enough, that managing expectations is the hardest part of this job. We consistently see our freelancers running into this at CloudPeeps. There are ways to really shrink the communication delta, and here are a few things, and you'll be surprised once you really start working with clients regularly. Simple things will make your life so much easier. The first thing is, as my friend, my old law school friend likes to say, it's all vapor until it's on paper. So absolutely get everything down on paper. The agreement you have, how long you're working with them, what the scope of work is, that absolutely has to be written down every time. If they're just asking you for things over the phone, make sure to follow up later on an email and say, just making sure that you want these 10 things. And it gives people the chance to say, actually, I didn't want that. Or, oh my gosh, I want even more. And make sure to talk to them and say, hey, look, this is out of your scope of work, and this will cost X. Because what people also really don't like is at the end of the freelancing project, you saying, okay, and now you owe me $1 million. And they're like, wait, I didn't realize I was asking for that many things, and what does that look like? So always track everything. Definitely track your time. There are really great ways to look at it. It's such an annoying thing to do, but it's so necessary. Up front with your clients, make sure you understand their communication style and they understand your communication style. So, and I say actually on the freelancer side, you should always be the one leading the getting on their calendar, sending them an invite, following up. That will be on you, and sometimes you have to chase clients down, but that way there's no confusion over who's calling who, am I calling you, where's the invite. Be proactive, because it'll just save you so much headache, so many headaches down the line. Also, what we've run into is when people work with a multitude of clients, some clients will perceive that you're their 24/7 workforce, even though you're a part-time contractor or freelance worker. So I would up front say, hey, look, I work from 9 to 5. I sleep at night. That's a really good thing. And make sure that you tell them when you usually work, so that they're not calling you at all hours, so they know that you're going to take a little bit, or you usually do your emails at 11 a.m. that day. It'll save you a lot of heartache. Mm-hmm. So the other thing is scoping. And I made it its whole other section because this is really important. We do it automatically at CloudPeeps, and it's so critical to the process. I would have it in front of you literally every time you're talking with your client, because even if they start going out of the scope of work by an hour, you need to track it. It is so easy for people to say, oh, I'll just do this as a favor, or oh, I'll just do that. And then all of a sudden you've done 8 hours of favors that you're not paid for, and it's a whole day of your time, and you're probably really talented, and they should be paying for your time. I've already gone over the communication part, but I'd say after every conversation, always follow up with an email. It was my cardinal rule as a consultant, and it never failed me. The last thing, and this is really important, is that it's absolutely okay to say no, and you should. It's healthy. So if you don't feel like you can actually accomplish what they're asking for, let them know. And then they can offer to help them find someone else, not just no and end of conversation. Hey, I've heard so-and-so is really good, let me refer you. Because then you're referring them in your network. Your network's really excited that they're getting referrals through you, and they're going to refer you on to other clients, right? It becomes this beautiful self-fulfilling prophecy, and your client then knows, hey, Randall has extreme self-awareness about what she can and cannot do, and she will help me regardless. And that's a really great thing to think about.
It's like this whole section is so valuable to me. It was sort of like when I first started freelancing, I thought, oh, that sounds important, but I don't have time for that yet. And then after one project, I was like, that's the most important thing, is making good patterns and being able to contain the project. And what you said about being able to say no, that one is, I think, at least for me when I was first starting out, that is still one of the hardest things, because I'm like, I still feel lucky that I have clients, so I feel like I can't say no. So that I guess it's just really good to hear that there is some benefit to saying no, that you can, understand your own time limits and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a huge problem for me, and I've gotten a little bit better at it, but I still have to really work on it because I'm a people pleaser. And so I want to make them happy, and I want to make sure that they get what they need. But I also don't want to lose my sanity because that's not going to help anyone.
Yeah.
At least I think so. My husband thinks so. So saying no, I mean, try it just once. You may be really surprised at how receptive people really are. The other day, just a quick example, a client was talking to me and saying, hey, this is what we're starting. We're considering getting a CloudPeep. And they were describing where they were in their marketing strategy. And I said, look, this isn't the right time. It sounds like you're focused on product. Do that and then come back to us. And you're going to be happier down the line when we're coming at the right time. And he was really thankful. And I think we had a really positive interaction after that. And those customers will really appreciate how self-aware you are and aware of what they actually need and what they don't.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it's like you're looking out for them too. Oopsie. I think we've got time for this if you want to keep going here.
Oh, sure. So the number one thing that you can do for yourself is stay organized and really get efficient. A lot of people, I didn't include it on this because I don't use it, but Evernote is a huge thing, a huge help for people. And some people totally swear by it. I'd say that my favorites are Asana for project management. If you're writing everything down, it helps you think backwards about how long projects will actually take. Harvest, again, for tracking time. I feel like I mentioned this a little while ago, but they give you tags so you can actually say, hey, I worked on these 4 facets of the project. Because the client sometimes, unfortunately, at the end, when they receive their bill, will say, hey, what did you actually do during that time? And it really helps because you're never going to be able to remember exactly how you spent every hour of every day. So I can't emphasize enough how important something like this is. And write it in your calendar for 15 minutes each day that you're going to track your time, or have it on in the background. It'll save you a bunch of headaches. Streak helps you come up with customer leads, and I think that's really important, again, when you start filling up your pipeline of potential projects. Definitely use a simple customer relationship management tool. It plugs right into Gmail, and it'll really help you stay on track instead of using an old Excel spreadsheet, which requires you to open another thing and then update every cell. One thing that my co-founder introduced me to, which is really good, is rescue time. And if you're like me, occasionally you'll get distracted and you wander over to people.com, or you see what was going on I don't watch them, but a lot of people do, Real Housewives. Rescue time will show you where you're actually spending your time. And if you feel like you're not getting what you need done, it can help you focus, give you it would show you the data behind where you're actually spending your time. I love Boomerang. I swear by it. I schedule so many emails because sometimes you know what you have to send. It has to go out at a certain time. You don't want to email people at 2 or 3 a.m. if you're up late for a project because you don't want to make it look weird. This is perfect. Freelancers Union has a ton of resources. They can talk about healthcare, which is really important. They can talk about the 1099 process. I mean, just save yourself time and see what's working for other freelancers. It's worth going and networking and tapping into those resources because you'll just save so many hours. The last one is Xero for accounting. And again, this is another recommendation from my co-founder. She's really good at being scrappy and efficient. And Xero is such an easy accounting tool. And the more you can keep track of your invoices, the better.
Yeah. From experience, I agree with that because I just went through my first year and I just had emails saved and things, and I realized I needed to actually think more about accounting.
And it'll make it easier because you can attribute certain invoices to customers. So you know, at the end of the year, when you worked with 10 different customers, you can easily find out, remember which customer, or maybe 20 customers, you can easily figure out who they were and then go back and ask them for your paperwork.
Yeah.
It's so much easier.
Cool. So, go on.
No, I have one more thing, and I didn't really cover it, but payments. A lot of people always have questions about payments. We take payment from the customer up front at CloudPeeps because proactively we knew going into it that chasing people down for money is one of the most painful and awful parts of this. And it can get really uncomfortable when you're like, hey, we're having this meeting for the 4th time. Can you pay me for all that work that I did? You know, like, when is that going to come in my bank account? I want to put that accounting software to work. So there are a couple of tactics just to have in your hip pocket. One is the customer can pay up front. That's probably not going to happen. It happens on platforms, so that's why platforms could make it easier for you. Some people will say, hey, look, first half up front, second half on delivery. But I would take something up front. And the reason because getting something down in your bank account is their confirmation that they are not only willing to pay you, but they have the money to. Even initially when we started this business, we weren't taking down the customer's information initially, and people were kind of flaking out because they were like, oh, this is interesting, but I actually don't have the money. And it's like, well, wait, you're wasting all of these freelancers' time, and you're wasting, you know, time on the platform, and it's not really effective. So it's actually a good way to kind of flush out people who aren't going to be serious about really using your services.
That's a good point. Okay, awesome. We have tons of time for questions. So if you guys have questions, go ahead, and I see that you've already started asking, but please continue. Wah, hair puff. But before I start giving Shala some of your questions, I want to remind you that we're going to send you away with this really cool freebie I forgot to mention at the beginning. We put together a little quiz so you can kind of ask yourself a lot of things we've talked through today, and just kind of see if you're ready for freelancing or if you maybe would rather start going into it gradually. And we've got a lot of resources at the bottom there. So after this, we'll send you away with that and the slides as well. And for now, we are yours to answer questions.
All right, bring it on.
Okay. Let's see. Some of these we've already touched on. Elsie says, should you take non-paying jobs in the beginning to build your portfolio? What do you think, Shala?
I answered that a little bit, probably after you had asked that question, but the answer is yes. Take 1 or 2. Don't take like 8. You know, you are worthwhile and you should be paid for that. So just take enough such that you have testimonials and you've done a good job and you can sell that easily.
Yeah. And it's also like, if they will pay you, take it, you know?
Right. Don't say no to that. Say no to things, but not that.
Okay, here's one from Darlene. She says, I'm a freelancer, but I feel like I'm at the mercy of whatever work comes my way rather than intentionally setting out to do work and get the clients I really want. Do you have any advice for that situation?
How much time are you spending on business development? And what does your business development look like? So the best consultants that I know are working, and maybe you're working with clients that you're really not excited about. Maybe you're helping them sell ketchup and you're really not jazzed about it. Do it to the best of your ability, and then go out and check out meetups.com, check out what's in your area, try to figure out ways to target the customers that you're looking to find. Try to think through where they'd hang out, what meetups they go to, and just start showing up, because half the battle is just showing up and telling people that you're actually working on it. And unfortunately, it means you have to leave the house. Even though sometimes I'd rather not go out and just stay in, especially on a hot day. The other thing is I see people often using emails to cold call. I don't think cold calling works, and I don't think emails are that effective. If you can get in front of the person or on the phone with them or on a hangout with them, it's going to be so much more effective than just emailing them out of the blue. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I always think emails would work for something like Fiverr or Freelancer, but all of the jobs I've gotten in town have been people asking me in person, so that's a good point.
And you can target people. It's totally fine. If you want to go work with craft on this particular project, look through LinkedIn and find friends who know other friends and then ask for introductions. And that's a great way to get on their radar.
Here's a good one. Rebecca says, how do you handle scoping a project that you do for free?
That's a great question. Decide up front how many hours you want to spend. Maybe it's just doing a part of the project free. So it may be, hey, I'm going to do the first 8 hours of this, gratis, but then subsequent part of this, I'm going to, we're going to charge X amount of money for the completion. I would say 8 to 20 hours, 20 hours tops on the first thing. It shouldn't be something that's 200 hours and takes 6 months to finish. That's not going to do you any good.
Mm-hmm. And this one is related. Kathy says, do you have links for how to scope projects effectively? How do you set reasonable expectations on the time a project should take? We kind of talked about that.
Yeah, there are a couple of ways.
If you have any links, I can write them down and then send them out with the email.
Yeah, I think I'll follow up with links after. And to be quite honest, I haven't really seen people do scoping well. I mean, besides CloudPeeps, of course, we do great scoping, I like to think. I haven't seen people do it really that well. I haven't seen a great template that I've loved. I actually have been searching for that for forever as well. I would say one great way, though, to parse out the projects is, begin with objectives and goals for them. And when you start going into the scope of work, align what work you're doing with exactly the objective and the goal, or mention it so that they see how everything tracks back. And actually price out the pieces of the project in chunks. So maybe X part will take 8 hours, and that will be $1,000. Y part of this will take 5 hours, and that'll be at a different price. Some of this is trial and error, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect from the start. No one's perfect. And I'd say think about your level of effort involved, and then what have you done in the past and how long has it taken, and use those as benchmarks for actually how you should scope out that project.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Tiffany
Unfortunately,
says...
it's an art, not a science.
I know. Tiffany says, what do you think is best, charging by the hour or having a flat fee?
Ooh.
I'll answer this one while you're thinking, because we'll probably have different answers. For me, as a beginner, I felt like I had to do a flat fee because everything was taking me a really long time. But and I didn't want to charge my clients for the time I spent learning. But I also calculated how much I make per, I calculated how long I thought a project would take me and how much I wanted to make per hour, and that's the flat rate I charge. So if I say, just as an example, I want to make $40 an hour and it's going to take me, 20 hours, then I would just multiply that up and charge them that amount as a flat fee. What do you think, Shayla?
I think that's an excellent answer. Another way to think about it might be if you've already templatized work, so say you're someone who creates Facebook pages for clients and you've done it a million times, you know about how long it's going to take you, you know what resources you need to tap into, that's a great time to charge a flat rate because you know exactly what it's going to be. And I'd say if you don't know what it's going to be, charge by the hour. Because, and especially with a client, it also depends on the client. So if this is a client where they're going to go out of scope, and you can tell from that first initial call where they're going to ask for everything under the sun, then absolutely make it hourly and don't make it flat, because you could end up doing a gargantuan amount of work and then not earn accordingly.
Yeah. And I found in my experience, if I charged a flat fee, that I have to, every time the client wants something new, I have to say that's not part of the agreement, but we can do that after we're done with this agreement for if we negotiate again, you know. So if you do a flat fee, I guess you have to hold on to the scope of it a little more, like it can't go out of scope or you're not getting paid for the work.
And you can also, yeah, you can kind of do a hybrid. So this part of the project is a flat fee, and then this part of the project is probably going to take, if it's going to take a multitude of iterations and you're going to be integrating their feedback over and over and over and over, charge by the hour, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Jesse says, so many people have said, don't go into freelancing because you won't have benefits. Healthcare is easier to obtain, but do you find it difficult as a freelancer due to the lack of benefits and security?
I think it also depends on where you are in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Are you having children? Maybe you want maternity leave and a benefits package, and a full-time job can afford you that for that 5-year period of time. I mean, once you're a freelancer, you don't always have to be a freelancer, or you don't have to be only a freelancer. You could work a full-time job and freelance on the side, or you can be you can freelance for a while and then go back to it. So don't feel like you're also pigeonholed, because or that's what I hear behind that question too, which I've heard from a lot of different people. If you're planning ahead and you know that you need to take a certain amount of time off, I don't know, that's when I think full-time job is better.
Yeah, like if you're freelancing.
I don't know, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I mean, it's really personal, right? So for me, it's like you're trading one kind of freedom for a different kind, you know? So maybe if you work at a 9 to 5 and you have benefits, you can do nothing for 2 weeks when you go on vacation. But if you're a freelancer, right, you get to decide when your vacation is and how long it is. And you can...
And you can also get bulk discounts. So Freelancers Union will have links to it, but you can get discounts on so many things just by affiliating yourself with a group. So even if you're not under an umbrella of some company's benefits, there are so many other places where you can group together with freelancers and get those benefits. So don't underestimate the importance of that.
Okay, here's one for you, Shayla. Tony says, does it cost to sign up to become or to be a CloudPeep as a freelancer?
No, come on in. The water's fine.
Let's see. Todd says, do you recommend having professional liability insurance for protection?
Oh, you know, I hesitate to start giving professional insurance advice on a webinar.
Yeah, that's true. I guess we're not really qualified to say, but if you're worried, you should think about what to do.
It can't hurt to go get a quote, right?
Yeah. Go
get a broker. And it depends on what you're in. Are you in government? Are you making nuclear devices? Definitely get insurance, I would say. No expert. You know, if you're dealing with a product and there's something with the FDA involved, definitely look into that. If you're going to be hosting clients in an office, for example, I think you do have to get insurance, because if someone slips and falls, you know, on the sidewalk just outside your office, you're liable. So.
And you guys should watch. We did a webinar with. Oh, what's her name? Of course, I can't think of it right now because I'm live. But we have a whole webinar on the legal steps you need to take from a lawyer who is qualified.
Yeah, not a lawyer, not an insurance broker. But I hope if you're concerned about it, ask about it.
Yeah.
What's the worst going to happen, right?
That's my answer too. Todd also asks, how do you handle it when clients aren't paying? Like, what are the steps you take?
I would say if they haven't paid and they're 2 weeks past, send them a reminder. If they're 3 weeks past, stop doing work for them, and tell them why. and wait for that payment. And sometimes you really need to set those boundaries and be really about them for people to actually wake up. I mean, at CloudPeeps, we take it up front for that reason, because we don't want anyone to ever feel like, oh, I'm never going to get paid for this work.
Yeah. Leslie told me who the webinar is. It's Basha Rubin, the legal webinar. So if you just go to the Skill Crush site and search for that, or go to our YouTube channel and search for Basha Rubin, you'll be able to see it. Okay. Let's see. Here's a good one. Artie Girl, she says, is there an average time frame that one specific freelance project should last?
No. I will say, though, and I'm sorry to have that answer, that's totally unhelpful. It can totally vary. It depends on you. Do you want a 2-hour project, or do you want a 200-hour project? I will say that, again, I'm not a tax lawyer, but if you start working and it looks like full-time for someone, and you're working 8 hours a day and you're working 12 months out of the year, and they're giving you a computer and hardware and all sorts of things, it starts to look a little bit like full-time. So just be super careful about that, and that's where I recommend seeing a tax lawyer and being sure it gets to be too much.
Artie Girl also asks, what is a starting salary for freelancing? How do you know what you charge your clients when you first break into freelancing? At Skill Crush, we have put together some guides that you can find on our blog for how to figure out how to set your rates when you first start freelancing. But the short answer is that it comes down to what you need, a combination of what you need to make ends meet and how advanced you are. So you can do Googling to figure out average rates for what the work you're doing, but then you also have to figure out how much money you need to be making and work backwards from there. And there's several guides on the Skill Crush blog about that.
I mean, where are you based? Are you in San Francisco, or are you in Utah? The cost of living is going to be totally varied. The other thing I talk to your peers, and it may seem really uncomfortable, but make friends with a few people who are doing this and kind of nudge them and be like, so how much are you charging? $1.50? You know, and benchmarking against your peers can be really helpful too.
Okay, we still have a couple minutes. There's so many questions. Do you mind if I ask a couple more?
Yeah, let's keep going.
Okay. Tiffany says, what if you're just out of school and you only have internship or school volunteer experience? I'm assuming she's saying, do you have the authority to start freelancing straight out of school?
Yeah, you can freelance at any point. I had a friend who was freelancing in high school. I mean, she's so ridiculously smart, and it sounds like you're smart too because you're here, right? And you're thinking about it. Break down your internships into what skills that you used for those internships. Did you compose marketing materials for them? Even preparing email communications, all of those are skills that can be leveraged. Did you run an event? People who are super organized are always in need. If you can break down the skills that you've already used into smaller bites, it'll be easier to obtain freelance projects that way. And don't underestimate the ability to work with your former professors, because sometimes if they've already seen you perform, they'll hire you on after you've graduated, and then all of a sudden you've gone from graduate to like working with your professor on something, and you're building your portfolio before you know it.
My roommate in undergrad actually just did that. Like he graduated and he got a 9-to-5, and he also started a side freelance business with his former boss from when he was in school. So you do have a lot of contacts when you're just leaving. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right, but Loan, do you think it's confusing to market yourself as an intersection of varying skills, or would it be more effective to create different brands for yourself for each skill? I'm thinking especially about personal websites and short bios. So I'm thinking it's like creating some content and building sites.
Right. Gosh, that's a tough question. I'm going to do that without context of what you're doing. let's say you were a graphic designer and a website builder and content marketer, could you list it so it looks like your skills are sectioned out more? Because I think just from a logistics standpoint, it would be really hard to keep up 4 different ends of yourself. It's kind of like Garth Brooks and Chris Gaines. It didn't work out for him. You know, he just, I would say the other thing to think about is maybe promote yourself or consider promoting yourself on the skill that you are best at. Start there and then widen your skill set. And then you're at least leading with one brand, but you're actually like gradually making it a little bit broader without going whole hog on it. And it might be easier for people to digest that way.
Yeah. And I'll say that in my experience, I'm kind of going through that same decision right now. Like, I've been doing freelance websites, but I could also do the content, and I'm trying to figure out a way to do both. So my current solution is to bill myself as a web designer with like bonus expertise in content, you know? So it's like, oh, I can do that for you too, but my main thing is solving your website problem, you know?
I like that, the bonus expertise, because we get a lot of people who are CloudPeeps who obviously, you know their way around Twitter and Facebook, but man, it's such a bonus if they understand Campaign Monitor or WordPress in depth. People will never turn you down for having extra skills.
Okay, here's one. We're almost out, but this is a good one. Heather says, have you experienced or known someone who does barter for services, i.e. a facial from a salon owner in exchange for SEO or site redesign? Any downside you can see to this approach to building a portfolio?
Oh, man. It could be a smart way of going about it. It's tough to quantify, though. You know, this for that. Like, a facial's awesome, but then if you're building an entire website for them, woof. I mean, that's a lot of work for just one facial.
Yeah.
I feel like asking Basha this question, like legally, how that works out, you know, in the accounting thing. So I'm a little bit wary to answer that definitively. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because it's like, does that count as a gift or what? So yeah, so maybe ask someone. But I mean, I think if you're on a very small scale, like your best friend does nails and you help her with her site, to me that's a little different. Like doing something with your close friend or something, or you know, I'll design your bar's website if you give me. I don't know. I think if it's someone really close to you, it's a little easier to maneuver.
Well, it's more of a favor.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'll help you with your resume if you can help me with my financial model.
Yeah.
Win.
Okay, a couple quick ones. Kellyanne says, will the webinar be recorded? It will, and we'll send you the link after. Artie again says, does Skill Crush give certificates when you complete the boot camp to show the training you've achieved? Yes, you can get a certificate. Little printout. Plus, you'll just be extra awesome after. And we are pretty much out of time. Shayla, do you have any last-minute tips or anything?
Best of luck. It can be as hard as you make it. Try to make it easier on yourself and enjoy the work because it really can be fantastic.
So that was it. 2 phases to go through to jumpstart your freelance career, figuring out how to even get started and dive in, and then figuring out how to streamline your process right away so you can be profitable as soon as you start. Like we said, we're going to send you off with some free materials, a quiz. You can, you know, maybe this is a lot of information and you still aren't sure if you can do it. You can just kind of go through this and line by line say, yes, that looks like me, no, that doesn't look like me. And it also has some resources at the bottom. You know, we talked about setting your rates, setting up different tools you might need to start freelancing. And as always, you can find lots of information like that on the Skill Crush blog. And I'll just plug right here also, if you are like, I really want to start freelancing, but I don't know what skills I would use, or I think I need more skills, please go check out our Skill Crush blueprints. They'll be linked in the email that I send out right after this ends, but you can learn web design and build websites, or WordPress, do WordPress development. So if you are not sure what kind of skills you would use, you can check that out. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and thank you for all your really insightful questions. See you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.